The quiet life. Lysara Vex adjusted her ceremonial sash as she walked through the gleaming corridors of Station Meridian. The massive orbital platform served as the heart of the Galactic Coalition's diplomatic operations, housing representatives from 47 different species. As a senior ambassador for the Valtorian Conclave, Lysara had spent the last 8 years mediating disputes, negotiating treaties, and building bridges between worlds that had once been strangers to one another. Her reflection caught in the polished metal walls as she passed. Green scales covered her elegant features, catching the artificial light in subtle patterns that marked her as a member of the Vex lineage, one of the oldest diplomatic families on Valtoria Prime. Her amber eyes held the weight of responsibility, and her posture spoke of generations of training in the arts of negotiation and statecraft. Today had been particularly exhausting. She had spent 6 hours mediating a trade dispute between the Centauran merchants and the Delphine Mining Consortium. Both sides had been stubborn, both had been convinced of their absolute righteousness, and both had threatened to withdraw from the coalition at least 3 times. Lysara had finally brokered a compromise, but the effort had drained her completely. All she wanted now was to return to her quarters, activate her environmental controls to Valtoria's preferred humidity levels, and spend the evening reviewing the cultural texts she had been studying. Perhaps she would also tend to her collection of Vorthian orchids, those delicate blue flowers that required such precise care. She reached her door and pressed her palm against the security panel. Nothing happened. She tried again. The panel flickered but remained locked. Lysara sighed deeply. Technology was supposed to make life easier, but in her experience, it failed at the most inconvenient moments. After 3 more attempts, she contacted station maintenance through her wrist communicator. A pleasant automated voice informed her that a technician would arrive within 30 minutes. Lysara settled against the wall to wait, pulling up reports on her handheld display to pass the time. 20 minutes later, a human appeared around the corner carrying a toolkit. He was of average height for his species, with dark hair showing traces of gray at the temples and warm brown eyes that seemed to take in everything without appearing to stare. He wore the simple gray uniform of station maintenance, and he moved with an economy of motion that suggested careful thought behind every action. "Ambassador Vex?" he asked, his voice quiet and respectful. "I'm Marcus Chin. I understand you're having trouble with your door security." "Yes, thank you for coming so quickly," Lysara replied, stepping aside as he approached the panel. "It simply stopped responding about 20 minutes ago." Marcus nodded and opened his toolkit. He worked silently for several minutes, using diagnostic tools to examine the panel's internal systems. Lysara found herself watching him work. Most maintenance workers she had encountered over the years were either chatty or completely dismissive of the people they served. This human was neither. He was simply present, focused entirely on the task, his hands moving with surprising precision. "The biometric scanner has a corrupted authentication matrix," he said after a few minutes. "It happens sometimes when multiple security protocols update simultaneously. I can fix it in about 5 minutes, but you'll need to recalibrate your handprint afterward." "That's fine," Lysara said. "I appreciate your expertise." As he worked, she noticed other things about him. His uniform was clean but worn, suggesting he had held this position for some time. His hands bore small scars, the kind that came from years of working with tools and machinery. But there was something else too, something she couldn't quite identify. The way he positioned himself allowed him to see both the panel and the corridor behind him. The way his eyes flickered to assess his surroundings every few seconds. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it was there. "You're Valtorian, correct?" Marcus asked as he rewired something inside the panel. "From the northern continent, if I'm reading your scale patterns correctly." Lysara blinked in surprise. "Yes, that's exactly right. How did you know?" "Most species can't distinguish between Valtorian regional variations." A small smile crossed his face. "I read sometimes. There's a lot to learn in the galaxy, and I find cultural studies fascinating. The northern Valtorians have a slightly different chromatic pattern in their dermal scales, more emerald than jade. It's quite beautiful actually." Something warm stirred in Lysara's chest. In 8 years on this station, very few people had taken the time to learn such details about her species. Most saw Valtorians as simply another scaled race among many. This human maintenance worker had noticed something that senior diplomats had missed. "That's very observant of you," she said. "Do you study many cultures?" "When I have time," Marcus replied, his attention still on his work. "I've been on this station for 3 years now. It seems a waste to be surrounded by so many different species and not try to understand them better." The panel chimed suddenly, and the door slid open smoothly. Marcus closed his toolkit and stood, brushing his hands on his uniform. That should do it. Just place your hand on the scanner and hold it for 5 seconds to recalibrate. Lasara did as instructed, and the panel beeped its acceptance. Thank you, Mr. Chin. You've been very helpful. Just Marcus, please, he said. And you're welcome, Ambassador. As he turned to leave, Lasara noticed something else. Inside her quarters, visible through the open door, was her collection of Vorthian orchids. One of them, her prize specimen, had begun to wilt, its blue petals turning gray at the edges. Marcus paused, following her gaze. Your Vorthian orchid is dying, he observed. May I? Please, Lasara said, curious now. He stepped inside and approached the plant, examining it carefully without touching. You have it too close to the direct light panels. Vorthian orchids need bright light but not direct exposure. The radiation spectrum from these standard panels is too intense for them. If you move it about 3 feet to the left, near the window, it will get filtered light through the station's external shields. That should be perfect. How do you know about Vorthian orchids? Lasara asked, genuinely amazed now. I grew some once, Marcus said simply. They're challenging but rewarding. This one is a particularly fine specimen. Vorthian Blue Empress, correct? They're quite rare outside the Vorthian home system. Yes, exactly, Lasara said. I've had it for 4 years. I would be devastated if it died. It won't if you move it, Marcus assured her. Give it indirect light and reduce your watering schedule by about 20%. Vorthian orchids are desert plants originally. They prefer to be slightly dry rather than slightly wet. He moved toward the door again, but Lasara found herself not wanting him to leave. Marcus, would you like some tea? I have a blend from Earth actually. I acquired it from a trader who said it was quite popular. Marcus hesitated, and for a moment she thought he would decline. Then he smiled that small smile again. I would like that, thank you. They sat in her modest living area, and Lasara prepared the tea using her heating unit. She had no idea if she was doing it correctly, but Marcus accepted the cup graciously and took a sip without complaint. It's good, he said. You prepared it well. They talked for over an hour. Lasara found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did with others. Marcus was easy to talk to despite his quiet demeanor. He asked thoughtful questions about her work, about Valtorian culture, about her family back home. In return, he shared small details about his life. He had been in the coalition for many years. He had traveled extensively before settling into his current position. He preferred quiet work to crowds. He enjoyed learning new things. What struck Lasara most was how present he was. When she spoke, he listened completely, not simply waiting for his turn to talk. His attention never wavered, never dismissed her thoughts as less important than his own. In the world of diplomacy, where everyone constantly calculated advantage and position, Marcus's genuine interest was refreshing. When he finally left, Lasara found herself hoping she would see him again soon. Over the following weeks, she found reasons to see him. A flickering light in her quarters. A temperature control that seemed imprecise. A data port that responded slowly. Marcus came each time, fixed whatever needed fixing, and they would talk. Sometimes for a few minutes, sometimes for an hour. She learned that he had no family. They had died long ago in circumstances he preferred not to discuss. She learned that he had served in military operations during his younger years but had left that life behind seeking peace. She learned that he valued quiet companionship, honest conversation, and the simple pleasures of a life lived without pretense. Lasara realized she was falling in love with him somewhere around the 3rd month. The realization came during one of their conversations when Marcus had made an observation about the nature of diplomatic language that was so insightful, so unexpectedly profound, that she had simply stared at him in wonder. He had looked back at her with those warm brown eyes and she had known. She asked him to dinner the following week. A real dinner, not tea in her quarters while he repaired something. Marcus accepted, and they went to one of the station's quieter restaurants, a place that served food from a dozen different worlds. They sat in a corner booth and they talked about everything and nothing. About books they had read, about places they had seen, about dreams they had carried and dreams they had released. Lasara, Marcus said at one point, his voice serious. I need you to understand something. My past is complicated. There are things I cannot talk about, things that I left behind deliberately. If we continue this, if we become more than friends, you need to know that I come with shadows. Everyone has shadows, Lasara replied, reaching across the table to take his hand. I don't need to know everything you've been. I only need to know who you are now. And the person I see is someone kind, thoughtful, and genuine. That's enough for me. Marcus looked at their joined hands, his calloused fingers against her scaled ones. You deserve someone without complications. Someone impressive. You're an ambassador, Lysara. You could have anyone. I don't want anyone, she said firmly. I want you. Their courtship continued for another 3 months. They moved slowly, carefully, building something solid between them. Marcus would bring her small gifts, things he had made or found. A bookmark carved from recycled metal. A small sculpture of a Valtorian orchid he had crafted in his workshop. Simple things that spoke of thought and care. Lysara introduced him to her favorite diplomatic colleague, Ambassador Trevix of the Andorian delegation. The elderly Andorian had been a mentor to Lysara for years, and his opinion mattered greatly to her. After dinner with Marcus, Trevix had pulled her aside. He is not what he appears, Trevix had said, his multifaceted eyes studying her carefully. I have seen many beings in my long life, child. That human moves like a predator, like someone who has walked through fire and emerged transformed. Be careful. I know he has a past, Lysara had replied. But he's left it behind. He wants peace now. Can you fault him for that? No, Trevix had said slowly. But the past has a way of finding us no matter how far we run. If you love him, be prepared for that truth. When Marcus asked her to marry him, Lysara said yes without hesitation. He offered her a simple ring, human tradition, a band of silver with a small green stone that matched her scales. They were sitting on one of the station's observation decks, watching the stars wheel past the massive windows, when he had taken her hand and asked the question. I know I'm not what your family probably imagined for you, Marcus had said quietly. I'm just a maintenance worker. I have no wealth, no status, no grand achievements to offer. But I love you, Lysara. I love your intelligence, your compassion, your strength. I love the way you see the best in everyone. I love talking with you about everything and nothing. And I would be honored if you would share your life with me. Yes, she had said, tears streaming down her scaled cheeks. Yes, Marcus. I will marry you. The reaction from her family was exactly what she had expected. Her mother's face had appeared on the communication screen in her quarters, disapproval etched in every scale and ridge. A human, her mother had said, her voice cold. A maintenance worker? Lysara, you are a Vex. We have served as ambassadors for 12 generations. You could marry a senator, a fleet commander, a corporate executive. Instead, you choose a human who repairs broken machines. I choose a man who treats me with respect, Lysara had replied, keeping her voice steady. A man who sees me as a person, not as a diplomatic asset. A man who makes me happy. Is that not what matters? Happiness is temporary, her mother had said. Status endures. Do you understand what people will say? A Valtorian ambassador married to a human laborer. It's unseemly. It diminishes our entire family. Then I'm sorry to diminish you, Lysara had said, her voice hard now. But I'm marrying Marcus. With or without your blessing. The communication had ended badly, with her mother refusing to attend the wedding and warning Lysara that she was making a mistake she would regret. Other colleagues had been more diplomatic in their disapproval but no less clear. Humans were still relatively new to the coalition, having joined only 30 years ago. Many species still viewed them as impulsive, emotional, and somewhat primitive. For a senior ambassador to marry one, especially one with such a humble position, was considered odd at best. But there were also those who supported her. Ambassador Trevix agreed to officiate the ceremony despite his concerns. A few close friends promised to attend. And Marcus himself remained calm and supportive through all the criticism. We can wait if you want, he had offered one evening. If this is causing you too much trouble with your family. No, Lysara had said firmly. We're not waiting. I love you, and I'm not going to let other people's prejudices dictate my life. The wedding was held in one of the station's smaller observation rooms. Perhaps 30 people attended, a mix of Lysara's diplomatic colleagues and a few of Marcus's co-workers from the maintenance division. The ceremony was simple, blending Valtorian and human traditions. They exchanged vows under the stars, promising to honor and support each other through whatever came. Lysara wore traditional Valtorian ceremonial robes, deep green with silver threading. Marcus wore a simple black suit, human formal wear, that somehow made him look both elegant and slightly uncomfortable. When he took her hands and spoke his vows, his voice was steady and certain. Lysara Vex, you have given me something I never thought I would find. Purpose. A reason to believe in tomorrow. I promise to stand beside you, to support your dreams, to be honest even when it's difficult, and to love you for all the days I have remaining. Lasara's vows were equally simple and equally true. When they kissed to seal their marriage, the small gathering applauded, and Lasara felt complete in a way she never had before. The reception afterward was modest but warm. People shared food from various worlds, and there was laughter and genuine celebration. Lasara noticed Marcus speaking quietly with a few humans in the corner, veterans from their military judging by their bearing. They seemed to treat him with unusual respect, almost deference. One of them, an older man missing his left arm below the elbow and bearing terrible scars across the side of his face, approached Lasara directly. "Ma'am, I want you to know you're marrying a good man. One of the best I've ever known." "Thank you," Lasara had said, touched by his sincerity. "That means a great deal." The man had started to say something else, then glanced at Marcus across the room. Their eyes met and something passed between them. Some unspoken communication. The veteran simply nodded and walked away, leaving Lasara puzzled. Later, when she asked Marcus about it, he had simply said the man had probably served in the same general operations and felt a sense of camaraderie. It was a reasonable explanation, but something about the way that veteran had looked at Marcus, with that combination of respect and something almost like awe, stayed with her. Their married life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Marcus would leave early for his shifts in the maintenance department, working through the station's endless technical problems. Lasara continued her diplomatic duties, mediating disputes and negotiating agreements. In the evenings, they would cook together in their small kitchen, combining Valtorian and human recipes into sometimes successful and sometimes disastrous meals that always ended in laughter. Marcus proved to be an excellent partner. He was supportive of her work, patient with her long hours, and always interested in hearing about her day. He remembered small details, the kind of things that mattered. He knew she preferred her tea at a specific temperature. He knew she liked to read before sleeping. He knew when she needed space to process a difficult negotiation and when she needed someone to hold her. But there were also moments that gave Lasara pause. Small things that didn't quite fit with the image of a simple maintenance worker. The way Marcus moved through crowds, always aware of everyone around him, his eyes constantly tracking potential threats even in the safest areas of the station. The way he positioned himself between her and strangers instinctively, creating a protective barrier with his body. The scars she discovered on his torso and back when they were intimate, marks that looked like weapons injuries, precise and deliberate. One evening, she traced a particularly nasty scar across his shoulder blade. "What happened here?" she had asked softly. "Old accident," Marcus had replied, his voice carefully neutral. "From my military days. I was careless." "It looks like a knife wound," Lasara had observed. "Some accidents involve knives," Marcus had said, and something in his tone had made it clear the subject was closed. There was also the incident at the market. They had been shopping for food supplies, moving through the crowded merchant district that served the station's residential areas. The place was packed with beings from dozens of species, all haggling and trading and socializing. Lasara had been examining some imported Valtorian spices when she heard a shout. She turned to see 3 Krygon thugs, large reptilian beings with aggressive temperaments, harassing a smaller merchant. The situation was escalating quickly. Before she could react, Marcus had already moved. He stepped between the thugs and their victim, his posture relaxed but somehow commanding. "Gentlemen, I think you've made your point. Perhaps it's time to move along." The largest Krygon, easily twice Marcus's size, had sneered down at him. "Human, this doesn't concern you. Walk away before you get hurt." "I don't think I will," Marcus had said, his voice pleasant but absolutely firm. "But you should know, if this becomes physical, station security will be here in approximately 90 seconds. And Krygons have been on probationary status for the last 6 months after that incident in Docking Bay 7. One more violation and your entire clan gets expelled from the station. Is whatever point you're trying to make worth that risk?" The Krygons had exchanged glances. The leader had studied Marcus more carefully, and something in what he saw had made him reconsider. "We'll remember you, human," he had growled, but they had walked away. "How did you know about their probationary status?" Lasara had asked afterward. "I keep track of station security reports," Marcus had replied with a shrug. "Never know when information might be useful." But that wasn't what had struck Lasara most. It was the way Marcus had positioned himself, the calm calculation in his threat assessment, the absolute confidence that he could handle the situation. That wasn't learned from reading reports. That was combat experience, real and extensive. She didn't push him on it. She had promised to accept his past without demanding explanations. But the questions accumulated in her mind, building like pressure behind a dam. Who was Marcus Chin really? What had he done in his military service that left him with those scars, those instincts, that unusual knowledge? And why did certain humans, particularly veterans, look at him with that strange combination of respect and fear? Lasara told herself it didn't matter. Marcus was kind to her, faithful, honest in all the ways that counted. His past was his past. She loved who he was now. But late at night, when she couldn't sleep, she would watch him lying beside her. Even in sleep, there was something alert about him, something that never fully relaxed. And she would wonder what shadows he carried, what truths he held back, and whether those secrets would one day rise up to change everything between them. For now though, for these quiet months of married life, she chose contentment over curiosity. She chose to believe in the life they were building together. She chose to trust that Marcus's love was real, even if his past remained hidden. It would prove to be both the wisest and most naive decision of her life. The legend revealed. The emergency broadcast interrupted every screen on Station Meridian simultaneously. Lasara was in her office reviewing trade agreements when the displays flickered and changed. The face that appeared belonged to Admiral Korthax of the Coalition Defense Fleet, his blue-skinned features drawn with concern. Attention all Coalition personnel. The Zarkonian sovereignty has launched coordinated attacks across 7 sectors. Multiple stations and colonies have been struck. All non-essential travel is suspended immediately. Military forces are being mobilized. This is not a drill. The message repeated as Lasara stood frozen. The Zarkonians were an insectoid species from beyond Coalition space, aggressive expansionists who had clashed with the Coalition repeatedly over the past decade. But this sounded different. Coordinated attacks across 7 sectors meant planning, resources, and serious intent. Her communicator chimed. It was Ambassador Trevix. Lasara, emergency diplomatic session in conference room Alpha in 20 minutes. The Council needs to formulate a response. This could be the beginning of a full-scale war. She acknowledged and gathered her materials, her mind already shifting into diplomatic mode. As she left her office, she sent a quick message to Marcus. Emergency Council session. Maybe late tonight. Love you. His response came immediately. Stay safe. I love you too. The diplomatic session lasted 6 hours. Representatives from 20 different species argued about appropriate responses, about whether this was truly an invasion or simply aggressive posturing, about military versus diplomatic solutions. Lasara found herself advocating for attempted negotiation, for opening communication channels with the Zarkonians before responding with force. They have already spoken with force, Ambassador Krell of the Thesian Empire had argued, his crystalline body refracting light in agitated patterns. They have killed Coalition citizens. They have destroyed Coalition property. Words will not stop them now. Words have stopped wars before, Lasara had countered. If we respond with immediate military action, we guarantee escalation. Let us at least attempt to understand their grievances, to find if there is any path to resolution that doesn't involve thousands of deaths. After hours of debate, a compromise was reached. A small diplomatic delegation would be sent to neutral space to attempt communication with Zarkonian representatives, while military forces prepared for possible conflict. Lasara was assigned to the delegation, along with 5 other senior diplomats. This is dangerous, Ambassador Trevix had warned her privately after the session. The Zarkonians are not known for respecting diplomatic immunity. If this goes wrong, you could be in serious danger. Then it's even more important that we try, Lasara had replied. If there's any chance of preventing a war, we have to take it. She returned to her quarters late that evening to find Marcus waiting. He had prepared dinner, a simple meal of vegetables and protein that could be enjoyed by both their species. But his expression was troubled. You're going on this diplomatic mission, he said. It wasn't a question. How did you know? Lasara asked, settling into a chair. Station communications aren't as secure as people think, Marcus replied. I heard about it through maintenance channels. Lasara, this is a bad idea. The Zarkonians can't be trusted. We have to try, she said, echoing what she had told Trevix. What's the alternative? Immediate war? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as if wrestling with something. I just want you safe, he finally said. That's all that matters to me. I'll be fine, Lasara assured him, taking his hand. We'll be on a Coalition diplomatic vessel and we'll meet them in neutral space. There are protocols, safeguards. The Zarkonians know that harming diplomats would unite the entire Coalition against them. Protocols don't stop bullets, Marcus said quietly. Safeguards don't prevent betrayal. There was something in his voice that made Lysara pause. Not fear exactly, but something deeper. Knowledge. Experience. You really think this is dangerous, she said. Yes, Marcus replied, meeting her eyes. I think this is very dangerous. And I wish you wouldn't go. I have to, Lysara said. It's my duty. You understand duty, don't you? From your military service? Marcus looked away. I understand duty. I also understand that duty sometimes asks us to make choices we can't come back from. They ate dinner in heavy silence. Afterward, Marcus held her on their couch, his arms wrapped around her as if he could keep her safe through sheer will alone. Lysara felt the tension in his body, the worry he was trying to hide. I'll be back in 4 days, she promised. Maybe 5. And then we can have that vacation we talked about. We could go to the Andorian pleasure gardens. You've never seen them, and they're beautiful this time of year. I'd like that, Marcus said softly. I'd like that very much. That night, Lysara woke to find Marcus standing by the window, staring out at the stars. She watched him from the bed, noting the stiffness in his shoulders, the way his hands were clenched at his sides. He looked like a man preparing for battle. Marcus, she called softly. He turned, and in the dim light, his expression was unreadable. Go back to sleep. I'm just thinking. About what? About promises I made to myself, he said. About the kind of life I wanted to build. About what I'm willing to do to protect it. The words were cryptic, but Lysara was too tired to press. She drifted back to sleep, unaware that Marcus stood there for 3 more hours, watching over her like a guardian angel, or perhaps like a predator planning its hunt. The diplomatic vessel departed 2 days later. It was a small ship, designed for comfort rather than combat. The delegation included Lysara, Ambassador Trevix, 2 human diplomats, and representatives from the Delphine and Kryler species. They would travel to the Zirian Nebula, neutral territory where the Zarkonians had agreed to meet. Marcus came to see her off at the docking bay. He kissed her goodbye, his hands cupping her face gently. Remember, Lysara. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you get out. You don't wait, you don't try to be brave. You run. Promise me. I promise, she said, touched by his concern. 4 days, Marcus. Then I'll be home. As the ship departed, Lysara watched through the viewport as Station Meridian grew smaller in the distance. She didn't see Marcus standing in the docking bay, his hands clenched into fists, his expression harder than steel. She didn't see him pull out a communicator and make a call to a number that shouldn't exist. She didn't hear him say 3 words that would set events in motion. Activate Protocol Shadow. The journey to the Zirian Nebula took 2 days. The diplomatic team used the time to prepare, reviewing Zarkonian culture and history, strategizing approaches for negotiation. Lysara threw herself into the work, trying to ignore the growing sense of unease in her gut. On the evening of the 2nd day, Ambassador Trevix joined her in the observation lounge. The elderly Andorian settled into a chair with a soft groan. You are worried, he observed. Yes, Lysara admitted. Though I'm not sure why. Everything seems to be proceeding normally. Trust your instincts, Trevix advised. In my long years, I have learned that intuition is often wisdom that our conscious mind hasn't yet recognized. Your mate was worried as well when you departed. I saw it in his eyes. Marcus always worries, Lysara said with a soft smile. He's protective. Perhaps, Trevix said thoughtfully. Or perhaps he knows something we do not. I have been thinking about him since your wedding. About the way he moves, the way he observes. I took the liberty of conducting some discreet research into human military records. Lysara felt a chill run down her spine. And I found very little, Trevix said. Which itself is interesting. Your husband's service record is heavily classified. What few details exist are redacted. But I did find something curious. There was a special operations unit during the Human-Krell War 15 years ago. They called it the Shadow Corps. Elite soldiers who conducted operations that officially never happened. The records are almost entirely sealed, but there are rumors. Stories of impossible missions accomplished by individuals who seemed more myth than reality. What are you suggesting? Lysara asked, her hearts beating faster. I am suggesting that your husband may not be the simple maintenance worker he appears to be, Trevix said gently. I am suggesting that his past may be far more complicated than either of us imagined. And I am suggesting that his fear for your safety may come from experience with situations like this. Before Lysara could respond, the ship's alarms began to wail. Red lights flashed throughout the corridor. The captain's voice came over the intercom, tight with stress. All personnel, we have multiple Zarkonian warships surrounding us. They are not responding to hails. Prepare for possible boarding. The diplomatic team rushed to the bridge. Through the main viewport, Lysara could see them. 5 massive Zarkonian warships, their hulls covered in organic-looking armor that seemed to pulse with bioluminescent patterns. They dwarfed the small diplomatic vessel. "This is a neutral zone," the captain transmitted desperately. "We are on a diplomatic mission under coalition protection. We request immediate communication with your commanding officer." The response was immediate and horrifying. Weapons fire lanced out from the Zarkonian ships, precise shots that disabled the diplomatic vessel's engines and communications array without destroying the ship entirely. They weren't trying to kill them. They were capturing them. "Seal all bulkheads," the captain ordered. "Prepare for boarding. All diplomatic personnel, get to the secure chamber immediately." But there was no time. Zarkonian boarding pods attached to the hull like parasites. Cutting tools began burning through the metal. Within minutes, they had breached in 3 locations. The Zarkonian soldiers that poured in were nightmarish. They stood over 2 meters tall, their bodies covered in chitinous black armor that seemed to be part of their natural exoskeleton. Multiple limbs ended in both hands and weapon appendages. Their faces were dominated by compound eyes and clicking mandibles. They moved with terrifying speed and coordination. The ship's minimal security force tried to resist but were overwhelmed in seconds. The Zarkonians used some kind of neural disruptor that left victims conscious but paralyzed. Within 10 minutes, every person on the diplomatic vessel had been captured and gathered in the cargo bay. A particularly large Zarkonian entered, its armor decorated with symbols that suggested high rank. When it spoke, a translation device on its thorax converted the clicks and whistles into coalition common language. "I am War Coordinator Zythrak. You are now prisoners of the Zarkonian sovereignty. You will be transported to our command vessel. Resistance will result in pain. Compliance will result in survival. Choose wisely." They were forced into Zarkonian boarding pods and transferred to the massive command ship. The interior was oppressively humid and hot, designed for the Zarkonians' insectoid physiology. For species like Lysara, used to cooler temperatures, it was miserable. They were taken to a large chamber and forced to kneel in rows. Zarkonian soldiers stood guard, their weapons trained on the prisoners. War Coordinator Zythrak stood before them on a raised platform. "You wonder why we have taken you?" Zythrak said, its mandibles clicking in what might have been satisfaction. "You came expecting negotiation. But we do not negotiate with those we will soon conquer. The coalition is weak, divided. Your species squabble among yourselves while we grow strong. Soon your territories will be ours." "This is an act of war," Ambassador Trevik said, his voice steady despite the circumstances. "The coalition will respond. You cannot defeat 47 species united against you. Cannot." Zythrak's compound eyes glittered. "We shall see. But you serve another purpose beyond being hostages. We seek someone. A legend from your past wars. The humans fought the Krell 15 years ago. During that conflict there was an operative. They called him many names. The Shadow of Terra. The Ghost. The Silent Death. He destroyed an entire Krell command fleet single-handedly. The Krell fear his name even now." Lysara felt her blood turn to ice. The description matched what Ambassador Trevix had hinted at. The Shadow Corps. Elite operatives conducting impossible missions. "We have intelligence suggesting this operative still lives," Zythrak continued. "That he operates somewhere in coalition space. We want him found. We want him brought before us. And you, prisoners, will be our bait." "Even if such a person exists," one of the human diplomats said, "why would they care about us? We're strangers to them." "Because," Zythrak said, "we have analyzed human psychology extensively. Your species forms emotional bonds. You protect those you care for even at great cost. And we know that at least one person here is connected to this operative." The war coordinator's eyes fixed on Lysara. Ambassador Lysara Vex. Married 6 months ago to a human named Marcus Chin. A maintenance worker, or so the records claim. But there are anomalies in those records. Gaps that suggest falsification. And there are humans who recognize him, who treat him with unusual deference. Lysara's mind reeled. It couldn't be true. Marcus was just a maintenance worker. He fixed machines. He grew orchids. He made her breakfast. He couldn't possibly be this legendary soldier. But even as she thought it, pieces fell into place. His scars. His awareness. His combat reflexes. The way veterans looked at him. His classified service record. His constant vigilance. "You're wrong," she said, her voice shaking. "My husband is a civilian. He's been out of military service for years." "Then you have nothing to fear," Zythrak said. "If he is truly just a maintenance worker, he will stay hidden and you will simply be hostages. But if he is what we believe—" The war coordinator's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. "Then he will come. They always come for the ones they love." The prisoners were separated and placed in individual cells throughout the ship. Lasara found herself alone in a small chamber, the walls made of the same organic-looking material as the ship's hull. It was hot, humid, and smelled of chemicals she didn't recognize. She sat on the floor and tried to think. Was it possible? Could Marcus really be this legendary operative? Part of her rejected the idea completely. The man she loved was gentle, quiet, peaceful. He wanted nothing but a simple life. But another part of her, the part that had noticed all those small inconsistencies, knew it was true. Marcus was exactly who the Zarkonians thought he was. He had been hiding his true identity, perhaps even from himself, trying to build a normal life away from violence and war. And now, because of her, that past was catching up with him. 3 days passed in the cell. Zarkonian guards brought minimal food and water, just enough to keep the prisoners alive. There was no communication between cells, no way to know if the others were okay. Lasara tried to maintain hope, but it grew harder with each passing hour. On the 4th day everything changed. The ship's alarms began to sound. Not the normal warning tones but something urgent, almost panicked. Lasara could hear weapons fire in the distance, explosions, screaming in Zarkonian language. The lights flickered. Her cell door suddenly slid open. Lasara scrambled to her feet, expecting guards. Instead, she saw a figure in the doorway. Human-sized, wearing full tactical armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The armor was covered in strange patterns that hurt to look at directly, some kind of active camouflage system. The figure's face was hidden behind a helmet with a dark visor. Lasara Vex? The voice was electronically modulated but somehow familiar. "Yes," she managed to say. "Who are you?" "Someone who made a promise to keep you safe." The figure entered the cell and attached a small device to her wrist. "This is a beacon. Stay with me and stay quiet. We're leaving." The figure moved back into the corridor and Lasara followed. As they moved through the ship, she saw the results of whatever assault had been launched. Zarkonian soldiers lay unconscious or dead in the corridors. Security systems sparked and smoked from precise sabotage. Blast doors had been cut open with surgical precision. They encountered a patrol of 4 Zarkonian soldiers. The figure moved before Lasara could even register the threat. The movements were impossibly fast, inhumanly efficient. 2 soldiers went down from precise weapon strikes. The third was disarmed and disabled with a hand-to-hand technique that looked like art. The fourth never even managed to raise its weapon before it collapsed. The entire engagement lasted perhaps 5 seconds. "Stay close," the figure said, checking the corridor ahead. They moved deeper into the ship, the figure navigating with perfect knowledge of the layout. They freed other prisoners along the way, Ambassador Trevix, the human diplomats, others. Each was given a beacon device. "Who are you?" Trevix whispered as they moved through the corridors. "Someone who should have stayed retired," the figure replied. They reached an auxiliary hangar where a sleek ship waited, clearly stolen from the Zarkonians. The figure ushered everyone aboard, conducting a quick head count. "Everyone's here. Strap in. This is going to be rough." As the ship launched, Zarkonian fighters scrambled to intercept. But their mysterious rescuer flew with skill that bordered on precognition, dodging fire that should have been impossible to avoid, threading through the Zarkonian formation like a needle through cloth. They made it to Coalition space where a patrol fleet was waiting. Only once they were safely aboard a Coalition cruiser did the figure remove its helmet. Marcus Chin stood there, his face hard and expressionless. His dark eyes, usually so warm and gentle, were cold and focused. This was not the man who made breakfast or tended orchids. This was something else entirely. "Marcus," Lasara breathed, stepping toward him. "Not yet," he said quietly. "We need to debrief first." The Coalition intelligence officers took statements from everyone, but they seemed most interested in Marcus. Admiral Korthax himself arrived to speak with him privately. Through the window of the interrogation room, Lasara watched her husband speak with the Admiral. She saw respect in the officer's posture, even deference. When Marcus finally emerged 3 hours later, he looked exhausted. He found Lasara waiting in a private room the crew had provided. For a long moment they just stared at each other. "You're the shadow of Terra," Lasara said. "The legendary operative from the Krell War." "I was," Marcus replied. A long time ago. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to leave that life behind. Marcus sat down heavily. Because I did things during the war that I'm not proud of. Necessary things, things that saved lives and ended threats, but things that cost pieces of my soul. When it was over, I faked my death and disappeared. I just wanted peace, Lysara. I wanted to be normal. And then I met you and I had a chance at an actual life. You lied to me. I omitted things, Marcus said. I never lied about who I am now, about what I want, about how I feel about you. All of that was real. But you weren't just a maintenance worker. Actually I was, Marcus said with a tired smile. I genuinely am qualified for that work. I genuinely enjoyed it. It was peaceful, simple, real. I got to fix things instead of breaking them. That mattered to me. Lysara sat beside him. The humans on the station, the veterans. They knew who you were. Some of them served with me or knew people who did. I asked them to keep my secret. Most agreed. They understood wanting to leave the war behind. Marcus took her hand carefully as if afraid she might pull away. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you. I'm sorry my past put you in danger. If you want to leave, if you can't accept what I am, I'll understand. Lysara looked at their joined hands, her green scales against his scarred skin. She thought about everything they had built together, every quiet evening and gentle moment. She thought about the man who had tended her orchids and made her tea. She thought about the soldier who had infiltrated an enemy warship alone to save her. They were the same person. Both were real. Both were Marcus. I married you for who you are, she said finally. All of who you are. The gentle man who fixes machines and the legendary soldier who saved my life. Both exist in you. I can accept that if you can accept that I have questions, so many questions. I'll answer them, Marcus promised. All of them. No more secrets. Over the following days as they traveled back to Station Meridian, Marcus told her everything. About his recruitment into the Shadow Corps at 19. About missions that officially never happened, operations that prevented wars or ended them. About the Krell War and the desperate measures humanity had taken to survive. About the cost of being a living weapon and the weight of carrying so many deaths on his conscience. He told her about Kepler Station, where he had infiltrated a Krell command fleet alone and destroyed it from within, killing thousands but saving millions. About how afterward the nightmares had become too much. About how he had realized he couldn't continue being that person and remain sane. I was never supposed to survive as long as I did, Marcus explained one evening as they sat together in their temporary quarters. Shadow Corps operatives had a life expectancy of 18 months. I lasted 8 years. By the end, I was more machine than man, running on training and adrenaline. I had forgotten how to be anything else. How did you learn to be Marcus again? Lysara asked. Very slowly, he said. It took years of just existing, of doing simple work and avoiding anything that required violence. And then I met you, and suddenly I had a reason to be human again. You reminded me what I was fighting for all those years. Not territory or politics, but connection, love, the chance for people to live peaceful lives. What happens now? Lysara asked. Will they ask you to come back? They already did, Marcus said. Admiral Korthax offered to reinstate my commission. The Zarkonian threat is serious and they want experienced operatives. He squeezed her hand. I said no. I meant what I told you. That life is behind me. I'm done being a weapon. What if they need you? Lysara pressed. What if there's another crisis? Then they'll have to find someone else, Marcus said firmly. I gave that life everything I had. I have nothing left to give it. But I have everything to give you if you'll still have me. Lysara pulled him close, pressing her forehead against his. Always. We promised for better or worse, remember? I remember, Marcus whispered. And Lysara? Thank you for not running. Thank you for seeing all of me and still choosing to stay. They returned to Station Meridian a week later. Word of what had happened spread quickly. People looked at Marcus differently now, with a mixture of awe and fear. Some avoided him entirely, uncomfortable with the reminder that a legendary soldier had been living among them as a maintenance worker. Others sought him out. Veterans who wanted to shake his hand. Young soldiers who asked for advice. Even some of the diplomats who had previously disdained Lysara's choice of husband now looked at her with new respect. Lysara's mother called, her tone significantly changed. I may have been hasty in my judgment, she said carefully. If you wish to bring your husband to Valtoria, the family would be honored to meet him properly. We'll think about it, Lysara said, allowing herself a small smile. Life slowly returned to normal, or at least a new version of normal. Marcus continued his work in maintenance, though now he also occasionally consulted with station security on defensive protocols. Lysara returned to her diplomatic duties, finding that her experience with the Zarkonians gave her valuable insight into negotiations. In the evenings they would still cook together, read together, talk about their days. Marcus was more open now, sharing stories from his past when they came up naturally. Lysara learned to recognize when the memories were too heavy and when he needed space to process them. One evening, several months after the rescue, they stood together on the observation deck where Marcus had proposed. The stars wheeled past the massive windows, infinite and beautiful. "Do you regret it?" Lysara asked. "Leaving the Shadow Corps? Choosing this quiet life?" Marcus looked at her, his warm brown eyes reflecting the starlight. "Not for a single second. I spent 8 years fighting in shadows, becoming something I didn't recognize. These last few years with you have reminded me who I actually am. I'm not the shadow of Terra. I'm just Marcus. A man who fixes machines, grows orchids, and loves his wife more than anything in the galaxy." "You're both," Lysara said, taking his hand. "And I love both versions of you. Even the one that's a legend?" "Especially the one that's a legend," she replied with a smile. "Because that legend chose me. Chose peace. Chose love over violence. That's the most remarkable thing you ever did, Marcus. Not the impossible missions or the saved worlds. It was choosing to be human again." Marcus pulled her close and they stood together watching the stars. Somewhere in the galaxy, threats still existed. War still raged. Darkness still pressed against the light. But here in this moment there was only peace. A legendary soldier had found his way home. Not to glory or honor or recognition, but to something far more valuable. He had found love, acceptance, and the chance to be something more than the weapon others had made him. And in the arms of a Valtorian ambassador who had seen past the humble disguise to the complex truth beneath, Marcus Chin finally allowed himself to believe that he deserved the quiet happiness he had found. The shadow of Terra had truly retired at last. And Marcus Chin, maintenance worker, husband, and former legend, had never been happier.